Do you really think you've figured out everything about Donald Trump, inequality, and this so-called ideological war? Think again. What I'm about to show you is something he, and many like him, would rather you never discover. Behind the glitz of million-dollar campaigns and fiery speeches lies a silent structure that's on the verge of collapse. And anyone who claims they can't see it is either blind or profiting from it. New York is the perfect stage for this farce, a city where billionaires live in penthouses, scraping the clouds while entire families are crammed into basement shelters. This isn't a coincidence, it's a design. It's not a lack of money, it's an excessive concentration. And that's why, when ideas like socialism, workplace democracy, and tax justice start gaining traction, the powerful panic. Because they know the moment people understand the game, they rewrite the rules. In this video, I'll show you point by point what's really hidden behind the curtain. And no, this isn't some conspiracy theory, it's history. It's politics. It's real economics, except with names, addresses, and concrete proposals. You'll see why Donald Trump is about to lose his mind. Because this time, the target isn't him, it's the system he represents. Have you ever walked through New York with your eyes truly open? I'm not talking about as a starry-eyed tourist, but as someone trying to grasp the soul of the city. You walk past a building where a billionaire lives at the top, and right next door, there's a public shelter where families sleep on thin mattresses. This is Donald Trump's New York, one of ostentation, but also of neglect. A city where luxury and misery share the same block, while the rich stack up obscene fortunes. 66 billionaires, over 800 people with $100 million or more, and hundreds of thousands of millionaires. The other side of the coin is bleak. Yes, New York ranks among the 10 poorest cities in the United States. That's right. In the very heart of global capitalism, thousands live without housing, healthcare, or dignity. And yet, some still claim socialism is what failed. The irony speaks for itself. What the media rarely shows is that this inequality isn't an accident, a blueprint. It's the direct outcome of a power structure that hoards wealth at the top while spreading misery at the bottom. The social impact? The collapse of urban cohesion, the erosion of community, the death of collective well-being. The middle class is being drained away while the wealthy keep buying penthouses they barely even use. But here's the thing, it hasn't always been this way. Few people know that municipal socialism was once a reality in America. That's not an exaggeration or some fringe fantasy. Milwaukee, for example, elected socialist mayors. And what did they do? They built efficient public transportation, affordable housing, and even social welfare programs long before these ideas were mainstream. The city was considered one of the cleanest and best run in the country for decades. Bridgeport also walked a similar path. The logic was simple. Instead of governing to please bankers and developers, they focused on ordinary people, workers, small shop owners, everyday citizens. The foundation of municipal socialism was care for public spaces, fair taxation, and a commitment to dignity. And the most surprising part, many of these policies, which now seem radical, were once considered plain common sense. That history unsettles a lot of people, especially those profiting from chaos. The real power of municipal socialism lies in this. It proves there's another way to organize a city. It's not just about adding bus lanes or opening daycare centers. It's about changing the logic of power. It's about making public money work for taxpayers, not for an elite that already has everything. Donald Trump and his friends don't want you to know this. And why does this almost never make national headlines? Because it hits where it hurts. Because it threatens corporate power, the grip of mega donors on campaigns, and the sacred dogma that the market will fix everything, asterisk. But history proves something different. Real change happens when the people govern. And if it was possible in Milwaukee, why not in New York, a city drowning in inequality, with an even greater potential for transformation? You've probably heard the claim that nothing can be done about New York's outrageous rents. That's a lie. One of the most realistic and urgent solutions is strengthening rent control. It's not new, already exists, but over time it's been gutted. Today, speculators buy entire buildings just to push families out and triple property values. The social impact is devastating. Middle-class families and workers can no longer afford to live near where they work. Neighborhoods empty out, lose diversity, and the city turns into a playground for the ultra-rich. That's not development, it's selective eviction. It's a direct assault on the very idea of an inclusive city. And the saddest part? All of this could be curbed with stronger laws and real enforcement. But then comes the fear. What if investors leave? Please. New York doesn't need them to survive. They need New York's wealth to keep their game running. What this city needs are policies that serve the majority, not a handful of people with an insatiable appetite for profit. Think that's utopia? Take a look at countries that manage to rein in speculation. The solutions exist. The only missing piece is courage. Actually, courage isn't missing among those who understand that socialism isn't charity, it's an urban strategy. Rent control is just the beginning. Protecting lives, memories, and histories means stopping families from being ripped out of their neighborhoods just because some luxury real estate fund saw an opportunity. And what if people realized the power they hold? Hold that thought, because the next step lights the fuse. Have you ever stopped to think about how much space goes to waste in a city like New York? Massive golf courses where a handful of millionaires swing clubs while thousands sleep on sidewalks. Nearby, it's surreal. And worse, those spaces often enjoy tax exemptions. Meanwhile, abandoned buildings rot away as rat dens when they could be schools, daycare centers, or affordable housing. The current logic is an insult to collective intelligence. When I talk about the social use of urban space, this isn't abstract theory. It's about looking at a city and asking, who is this serving? A golf course could become a public park, a community center, a playground for kids. An abandoned building could be renovated by cooperatives and turned into housing. And guess what? This isn't a fantasy. It's already been done in Barcelona, Buenos Aires, even Detroit, through amazing community projects. So why not in New York? Because there's a power structure in the corporate and real estate sectors that profits from scarcity. The more desperate people become for housing, the more profitable the crisis becomes. And that's why we need to rethink who runs the city. Because if it's up to billionaires, nothing changes. They need the crisis to keep justifying their outrageous prices. Donald Trump doesn't want you thinking like this. For him and his peers, space is power, and power means profit. But what if people started occupying these spaces intelligently, in an organized, community-driven way? That's when real change begins. And you know what? It's already starting to happen. And this is just the beginning, because when we talk about cities, we're also talking about energy, transportation, and well-being. That's where things really heat up. Did you know New York's electricity bills are more than double the national average? That's right. And it's not because energy is scarce, it's because greed is overflowing. Private companies control distribution and charge whatever they want, backed by politicians who turn a blind eye. The social impact? Families cutting back on food just to keep the lights on. A rich city with poor people living in the dark. Now imagine if the city generated its own energy, clean and local. Picture solar cooperatives on the rooftops of schools and public buildings. It's possible, it's viable, and it's already working in cities across the world. And that's not even the end of it. Public transportation could be free. Yes, completely free. It's already been done in Tallinn, Estonia. The result? Fewer cars, less pollution, better quality of life. And that's just the beginning. You know those insanely expensive daycare centers that swallow a family's income? With a real social welfare policy designed for the people, those daycares would be public, high quality, and accessible. Add to that nutrition programs, preventive health care, and psychological support, offered through integrated community centers in every neighborhood. All of this could be funded by a source everyone pretends doesn't exist: the ultra-rich. Donald Trump would probably call this radical socialism. But if taking care of people, making a city livable, and using public money to create well-being is radical, then maybe it's time to be radical. Because while the rich lock themselves in luxury compounds, ordinary people are trapped in a survival routine. And there's more, especially when the conversation turns to taxes. Every time someone suggests raising taxes on the super-rich, the same old script appears. They'll leave. Nonsense. New York is the ultimate stage for the elite. They have their offices here, their favorite museums, gala dinners, and their kids in the most exclusive private schools. The truth? These millionaires aren't going anywhere just because they're asked to contribute. This is fiscal blackmail, and the people need to stop falling for it. Progressive taxation is a matter of justice. If someone makes an obscene fortune off a city, the least they can do is contribute proportionally. We're talking about people who earn in a single week what most will never make in a lifetime. And yet, politicians like Donald Trump still think taxing these fortunes is unfair. What's truly unfair is having children go hungry within 5 blocks of a $40 million yacht. And if they really decide to leave, fine, let them. Leave those skyscrapers empty, because you know what could take their place. Imagine turning a Wall Street office tower into a worker-run business incubator. This has already transformed communities in Italy and southern India, giving people dignity, autonomy, and an economy built on cooperation, not exploitation. The resistance to progressive taxation exposes something deeper: the elite's fear of losing control. Because this isn't just about money, it's about power structures and corporations, about who decides and who obeys. And that's exactly where the turning point begins, when the conversation shifts from taxes to the economic model itself. That model is crumbling. Some think socialism is just a trendy idea cooked up on TikTok by college kids. Don't be fooled. What progressive leaders like Zoran Mandani and others are proposing is a modern reimagining of something that worked before. Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal policies that would be branded socialist today saved the country from a catastrophic depression. In other words, this isn't a wild new experiment. It's historical memory. The socialism emerging in American cities isn't about nationalizing bakeries. It's about democratizing access to a dignified life. It's a natural response to the failure of extreme capitalism, a system that concentrated wealth, destabilized work, and wiped out the middle class. The social impact of this: despair. A despair the right often channels into fear and xenophobia. Socialism offers a different path, channeling despair into hope. The rise of progressive ideas isn't a sign of radicalism. It's a sign the current system is collapsing under its own weight. And like any structure in free fall, there are only two possible outcomes. Either the people take back control, or the elite cling desperately to what remains. Donald Trump represents the latter, trying to keep the old order intact, even if it means standing on ruins. The decline of the American empire is visible in the details: crumbling infrastructure, precarious jobs, and a generation of young people buried in debt just for a basic education. Inequality isn't a flaw, it's a feature of the current system. And more people are beginning to realize that. The new socialism is really just common sense dressed in courage, trying to reorganize a house that's on fire with people still inside. And if there were any doubts that the flames are spreading, just look at the pain of the middle class, the very group that once symbolized the American dream. Today, that dream has become a nightmare, eerily reminiscent of darker chapters in history. And this parallel isn't just symbolic, it carries warnings we can't ignore. The American middle class was once the engine of the economy. Today, it's like a car running on empty, struggling uphill. The cost of living has skyrocketed, wages have stagnated, and debt has become a permanent companion. You see it when a teacher with a master's degree delivers food to make ends meet. When a family with 2 full-time jobs can barely pay rent. That's not normal yet, it's been normalized. Collective despair like this isn't new. In 1930s Germany, a nation gripped by crisis faced desperate workers, runaway inflation, and broken promises. Then came someone offering national greatness and convenient scapegoats. Sound familiar? History is a brutal teacher. If we don't offer real alternatives, someone will sell a dangerous illusion. In this context, socialism isn't a threat, it's an antidote. It's an effort to channel pain into reconstruction, not destruction. To give people a chance to rise with dignity, not with fiery speeches that only serve the same old elites. Donald Trump embodies that trap. He feeds on pain, then delivers policies that deepen the very inequality that caused it. The absence of real social policies becomes fertile ground for authoritarianism. When desperation knocks, people will accept anything that looks like a solution. That's why diagnosing the problem isn't enough. We need to show real, structural, human alternatives. Alternatives that restore hope after decades of broken neoliberal promises. And if there's one country that forces us to face this dilemma, it's China, not for the reasons most think. Because what's happening there says more about the United States than about them. America's elite loves to call China a threat, but they avoid explaining why. It's not about communism or unfair trade laws. It's because China dared to build a hybrid model, where the state intervenes strategically in the economy while still allowing private enterprise. The result? Accelerated growth, modern infrastructure, and technological advancement, things the US has been abandoning. While we dismantle railroads, hospitals, and public universities, they're building not because they're magical, but because the state is used as a tool for development, not held hostage by the market. When China sees a strategic opportunity, it invests massively. Meanwhile, the US hands out tax breaks to billionaires in exchange for empty promises of job creation. That terrifies people like Donald Trump men, who sell the illusion of a small government while clinging to subsidies and protections. The truth is, the free market in America is a myth carefully regulated to favor the wealthy. The middle class pays the price while corporations get bailouts when they fail. Ever seen Wall Street save the poor? Me neither. The real difference between China and the US isn't just economic, it's about vision. They invest in planning. We gamble on billionaires saving us with their rockets. Meanwhile, inequality deepens, infrastructure crumbles, and people lose patience. China isn't the problem. The problem is how stubbornly we refuse to learn from those who are doing things differently. If we truly wanted to learn, we have to start from within, at the very root of capitalism's cancer, the power structure inside companies. And this is where everything changes. Do you know what really sustains capitalism as we know it? The internal structure of corporations. While we argue about taxes, wages, and inflation, the real center of power remains untouched. The relationship between those who command and those who obey. In almost every company, a few give the orders, while the many execute them. It doesn't matter how hard you work, how dedicated you are, or how brilliant your ideas might be. At the end of the day, the profits belong to the owner. This hierarchy is treated as natural, as if it were carved in stone, but it's not. It was built, and anything built can be dismantled. So why can't we have companies where workers themselves make the decisions? Where profits are shared fairly and decisions are collective? This isn't a fantasy, it exists and it works. Just look at Mondragon in Spain, a living example for over 60 years. So why isn't it on the front page of every newspaper? Because it's a direct threat to those who have always sat at the top. Workplace democracy is the corporate elite's worst nightmare. And why? Because when people realize they can lead, they stop accepting being led. It's simple, it's logical, and that's why it terrifies people like Donald Trump and his friends in the corporate world. Change has to start here, with who makes the decisions inside the place where we spend most of our lives, work. Without this transformation, every attempt to fix inequality is like trying to fill a bucket full of holes. You can pour as much water as you want, it'll keep leaking out. Capitalism as it stands is a system designed to concentrate wealth at the top and distribute obedience at the bottom. Think that sounds radical? Wait until you see what happens when we apply real democracy at the heart of business. Imagine a workplace where every employee has a real voice, not a decorative one. Where decisions aren't made in secret meetings by a handful of suited executives, but openly debated by the people who make the wheels turn. That's workplace democracy. Sounds like utopia? Mondragon has already proven it works. Worker-run companies don't just function, they thrive. In this model, profits are shared, salaries are balanced, and respect is the rule, not the exception. Nobody earns 300 times more than the person sitting next to them, and here's the kicker. Productivity rises because when you work in a place that values your opinion, you actually care. The social impact? Less stress, less inequality, more well-being, and a massive shock to traditional capitalism. That's why the system resists so fiercely. A democratic company threatens the very logic of exploitation. It shatters the myth that wealth is created by visionary leaders, when in truth, it's workers who keep everything running. Donald Trump and his peers know this. They just don't want you to find out. Because once you do, you'll demand your seat at the table. And here's the irony. We live in a society that preaches democracy as the ultimate value, yet denies it in the one place we spend most of our lives, the workplace. Without economic democracy, everything else is theater. Elections without workplace democracy are just a performance. And as long as the people stay out of power where wealth is created, poverty will be produced at the same rate as wealth. So, maybe the problem was never about a lack of money, but about who decides what to do with it. If you thought this was provocative, wait until you see what's behind the ideological war Donald Trump will fight when this idea catches fire. After everything you've heard, does it still seem like the problem is only political, or do you see now that the rabbit hole goes much deeper and much older than it appears? The richest city in the country is also among the poorest. Corporate power structures shape your life more than your vote does. And all the while, they call it radical. To demand that power return to the people. So what will you do with this knowledge? Ignore it and hope things magically get better? Or start questioning, sharing, studying, and pushing for real change? Transformation starts with understanding, but it only becomes real through action. And as a certain stubborn old man once said, if you're not outraged, you're probably not paying attention. If this woke you up, don't let the spark die out. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this with someone who still believes the system as it is will lead us somewhere better. Because here's the truth, my friend. Either we change the rules, or the rules will keep changing us, always for the worse.